Hey friend, it's Helen. Today's episode is a little different and honestly such a joy. I got to sit down with my friend, someone I deeply admire, editor, podcaster, consultant, Matthew Bliss, on his show, Rethinking Podcasting. And you know when a conversation just feels like an exhale? Well, that's what this was. Today, Matthew invited me into this really generous space to talk about all the things I hold close: creativity, mental health, messiness, making things that feel slow in a world that feels so fast. I found myself sharing parts of my story I don't always get to tell people: managing anxiety, perfectionism, learning to trust my own voice again. And we wandered into this big question of what sincerity looks like in podcasting today, how to make things that feel alive instead of optimized. I personally talk about changing the metric from getting a ton of views to just helping people move forward and sharing my story. This is honest, it's hopeful, it's full of those quiet, oh wow, me too moments. And because I love this conversation so much, I'm bringing it here to you, my people, my sincere practice. So pour something warm, settle in, and enjoy this special crossover episode with the brilliant Matthew Bliss on Rethinking Podcasting. Enjoy.
Helen Garcia, welcome to Rethinking Podcasting.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm happy to be here.
What is the most important creative practice that you've developed for yourself?
That's a good question. I'm torn between exercise and journaling, but because I had a really great workout before this podcast episode, I would say exercise. The reason being is because I think that with the recent studies that I do in my therapeutic practice, I think that exercise actually increases our dopamine, our serotonin. Dr. Wendy Suzuki calls it like a bubble bath for your brain because it releases all of these really happy chemicals and stuff. So I would say exercise, specifically kettlebell exercises.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the exercise something you do every day?
I try to.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like medicine for my body because I'm prone to anxiety and depression, just naturally, like overthinking and overthinking. I think it's the plight of being a creative, just like constant need for perfection and excellence. So exercise helps me tackle my brain very early in the day. I don't really consider it a practice for the sense of looking good or feeling healthy. It's a necessity for me just to be able to have energy throughout the day. So it's my motive is very different, I would say, from other folks. It disciplines my brain.
And I know that you are a big fan of exploring creative practices of other people. Is there another couple that you'd want to share just as something that helps you as well? Because I know that you're a big fan of the Field Notebook and those analog
Oh
kind of
yeah,
technologies.
yeah. Thanks for asking about that. So I have like a 3 notebook system. I have one specifically dedicated to work planning. I have one that's just brain dumping all of my thoughts in the morning. And then I have one that's just a commonplace book with all of my favorite quotes from all of my favorite authors, all the books that I'm reading. And every notebook is placed in a different part of my house. So I have my planner that's on my desk, and then my brain dump book on my dining room table, and then my commonplace book right next to my bookshelf, all of which like jog memories. I think I've taken a lot from James Clear's Atomic Habits because I work with a lot of creatives as a therapist, but also as a creative myself. Like I'm obsessed with audio quality, camera. I do a little bit of acrylic paint. I do music. So I like to dabble in different things. And so reading is really grounding because it helps me submerge myself in the wisdom of other people. I think going on nature walks, like long, long walks, I go with my husband, I go by myself. It really helps clear my thinking. Sometimes I take AirPods with me just because I want to be thinking about something else, and other times I don't take anything. Just go on a walk. I obviously bring my cell phone, but yeah, so far those are the things that come to mind for me. What about for you? What are your creative practices, your favorites?
Before I talk about any of my stuff, I want to
Okay.
stay on you for a sec, because I think what we've done in that first couple of minutes is speedrun a lot of names and habits that people talk about quite a lot.
Mm,
And I think for you, the sincere practice at the moment and a lot of your previous projects have been around that, exploring that creative practice, the different things that you can use to improve how people approach their work. And you are
yeah.
very demonstrative and you focus on teaching for other people in that perspective. What I would love to know is what passion drives the exploration of all these things. Because I
Mm,
think so many people get trapped in exploring all this stuff, like James Clear, Atomic Habits, Small Things, Eat Frogs, go out, change environment for different activities,
totally.
all that stuff. You can get trapped there. So what you haven't yet said is why you explore all this. I'm very keen to know what that reason is.
Yeah. Hmm. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I have struggled lifelong with anxiety and depression, as I've shared in the beginning. And a lot of these disciplines have helped me stay healthy. So, one of my biggest motivations in pursuing a creative practice is because I felt really limited by my own mind and by my immigration experience. I think, I immigrated here when I was 5, a month away from turning 6, and I watched my parents go from having all the money that we could ever have, maids, butlers, to having nothing, less than $1,000. I think we had $700 for a family of 4 in our bank account, all living in one bedroom, and I think that did a lot for me as a child. I like to say I'm a minimalist, but not by choice. I think by necessity. As a child, I had to learn to live with a lot less. And so, what that did subconsciously and consciously was it made me limit what I could do in life. So, when I discovered creativity during the pandemic, I was in my first year of graduate school, still struggling with a lot of my own demons. And so, I guess trigger warning for folks, like I've had a history of self-harm, suicide. So there's just a lot of freedom that I've gained from creativity. And so the passion and the purpose has been really transformative for me, if you will. It's helped me develop a healthier relationship with other people. It's helped me communicate better. I feel like I've embraced my weird. One of my favorite books is a book by James Victory. I actually took a lot of his creativity classes during the pandemic. The book is called Feck Perfection. It's a really funny book, and it's a play on words, obviously. And a lot of the book talks about years of feeling suffocated by his father, who was in the military, and the painstaking journey that he took to become an artist. And I think the life of an artist is like just from the readings that I've done, my own personal life, it's filled with a lot of your own torture.
Mm.
And you already know this about me, Matthew, and we're going to talk about this later, but I struggle with indecision. So I've played around with so many different microphones. I want to find the perfect microphone. And so that is just one small, teeny example of how I live my life: constant decision paralysis, constant overthinking. And so pursuit of these creative practices helps me gain clarity for myself and what I want long term. Yeah, so that's what comes to mind right now.
I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
And it's actually insightful for me,
Mm,
because for the listener, we met through a mutual acquaintance maybe a couple of years ago, and we haven't interacted much in the interim, but I have followed your content quite
mm,
closely for the last while,
thank you.
which is why I know also your indecision applies to podcast names too.
Yes,
um,
totally.
which is perfectly fine, I reckon. The insight I had about you coming to this conversation was that it wasn't indecision, but it was comfort with exploring. But
Mm.
it's really interesting to hear you say that the creative practices that people usually use to get somewhere, you're using to structure where you already are so that you make life manageable for yourself
Mhm.
with the things that you know that you have a predisposal to. And whatever that might be, a troublesome childhood, displacement from one country to another. It's an interesting perspective that we don't hear a lot. There's a lot of hustle bros out there talking about James Clear saying, do 1% every day and 365% at the end of the year, you'll improve and all that kind of thing. There's a
Yeah.
much more wholesome aspect to you that I would love to share with the world through a conversation like this one. But I don't want to disrespect you at all. When you asked before about my creative practices, I'm still trying to figure that out for myself because I think we're very similar in the sense that we're plagued with decision, or with indecision rather. We're always trying to hunt for something else that can, fill an extra space and optimize a little bit of our life a little bit better, and a strong desire to tell other people about those things, to share that journey through the creative practices we create. So podcasting is a major one for me. And that's how we connected, and exploring the management of to-do lists and time tracking, having notebooks to write things down is super important. One thing that we do differ on though is the field notes. You prefer the physical notebook,
Yeah.
whereas I've found that it's too cumbersome and slow for my thoughts to get captured. So I
Mhm.
tend to use my phone, but I will pump the thoughts into my Todoist app and leave them there as referential material for after I come back from a walk or being out with people, and use it that way. But I've been particularly deliberate with the ways that I approach technology. Like I try to make sure that I don't let it hijack me in any sense. And I'm very familiar and intrigued by the concepts of flow and focus from the biological senses. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of Rian Doris and the Stephen Kotler with the Flow Research Collective. But yeah, does any of that resonate for you? Does any of it make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah, I love Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book, Flow. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't read his book, Creativity, I think, Creative Flow. I'm not sure what it was called, but a lot of the science behind it, I'm getting like a light bulb moment right now. But when I was growing up, my dad is a scientist, my mom is a nurse. So a lot of the discussions that we had growing up had to do with the physical body. And when I discovered mindset and the transformative power of epigenetics, the science of environment and how you surround yourself with environment, I was really fascinated by that because I thought that we were just stuck in our genetic disposition. And so a lot of the uniqueness I think that I bring into the creative space is the mix of the biological component with the mental health component. So much of the discussions that we had in our dinner table had to do with innovative microbiology research, like the latest virus that's going to come out in the next 100 years that's going to make all of us sick. My dad would talk about that as I was eating
Mm.
spaghetti. So comfortable talking about bowel movements, sickness, skin rashes as I'm eating because I was
Mm.
trained that way. But my sister's not that way at all. But so much of that just excites me. So you talking about flow research is I nerd out about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, my rabbit hole that I try to, scratch off a bit of the fog for other people is a lot of the things to do with social media and what some people colloquially call limbic hijack, the way that the algorithms are trained to re-dopamine us through shorts and reels and all that kind of thing, and the trap we get into, and the way that AI is uh, starting to shift in that direction as a way for us to distract ourselves and reinvigorate the attention economy. But the way that those intermittent schedule reward systems play in systems like flow, because the big light bulb moment for me in that sense was that I play and have played video games for a long time. And it's so easy to sit into flow when you're playing a video game. But I had no concept of that until I discovered what flow is in the neurobiological concept. And I think a lot of people try to talk about flow outside of the biology, but we have to respect it because there are things, like you said, there's the genetic material that cannot change and the systems that cannot change. There are things that we can change with environment, and the environmental change is becoming the biggest part of what people need to consider for maybe the next 10 years. But anyway, that's a bit of a rabbit hole. You did mention that you do some mental health work as part of what I presume would be your day job.
That's my day job, yes. And I would presume my calling as well.
Yeah. And it's a great perspective to have coming to creative practices, and particularly for the listener coming to podcasting. I think starting with a good, strong mental health foundation is a good idea. Speaking to the podcaster, how do you bring that therapeutic element into creative practices in what you do and how you approach your podcast?
I think being a therapist teaches you not to assume anything about anyone. And so in podcasting, when you're speaking to a large audience, I never want to use we statements or us statements. I'm just talking from a more experimental perspective of these are some of the things that I'm trying. These are things I'm discovering about myself. Perhaps this might help you, but take the pieces that work and take the pieces that don't work. I think that, I'm really weary about the self-help space because there are so many people there who don't have the clinical training or the clinical backing, but will tell people, I love you, or you're worth it, or, there's so much out there about Mel Robbins, how she starts and ends with something encouraging. And she doesn't have the training. And then there's a lot out there about Jay Shetty now, and he is a really big cultural figure, rebranding as a monk. So many YouTube videos that have come out about plagiarism. And so I'm very weary about that and very understanding about that. And then there's also the component of manipulation that goes into the persuasive psychology. In my bachelor's degree, before I became a therapist, I studied so much of Robert Cialdini's influence and how influence tactics can make people spend thousands of dollars in what they would deem transformation, but have no transformative power at all. You're just giving to a funnel stream that makes people get richer. Then you get poor because you're giving them something. So it creates a deficit mindset. So I'm really weary of that. And I think as a creative person, I want to infuse strength and belief in the creator, helping them make decisions for themselves, as opposed to telling them that I'm the expert and I know everything. Where in the clinical training of a therapist, you're taught that the client is the expert of their own lives and they should be the ones to make their own decisions, unless they're in danger or in harm's way or at a risk to themselves or others. So that plays a really big component in the lens at which I see a creative person, that they have a uniqueness that I might not know about. And to proclaim that I do know everything, I think is foolishness.
I think we're in an environment where a lot of people feel like they need to portray themselves as the expert who knows everything and cannot be questioned. And if you do what I say, then, and if you don't want to listen to me, buy my book.
That's
or my
so
coaching
true.
course, whatever
I
it
think we
is.
had a dialogue about this a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago, but I have a really big issue with the way that podcasts are turning out. And you said the same from our conversation, that people don't have the ability to question the beliefs. And if you do, you come off as rude. And when you have a media platform, I think we should have the ability to question. I was listening to a Mark Manson episode about the fact that he stopped doing a lot of interviews because he felt like he couldn't question the person that he was speaking to. And yeah, you're nodding your head, so I think you agree.
I was about to bring him up because he was the one who stepped out and said, I'm changing my podcast completely because I don't feel comfortable not being able to question sponsor ad reads and guests that say really weird stuff. And he dropped a few names there as well that I think he had a bit of a problem with, like charlatan kind of stuff. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So that's an interesting way. That's a good way for you to approach your podcast and the way that you want to be seen. And I guess trust versus expertise, or whatever the balance of those two would be, ideally what you're aiming for there. What if someone wanted to do that for themselves with the exploration you do, the trust you build, and the therapeutic advice that you bring to your own approach to the podcast, and trying to avoid the ick of the podcasting industry as we've described so far, what creative practices would you recommend to people looking to edge more towards the trust than the expert? I struggle to find a better word than expert for that. I don't think it's the right one, but hopefully you know what I mean.
I think I would want to ask questions more than provide answers of what is all of this for? What is all the money for? At the end of the day, how will you know that a business was a success? And so I think Alex Hormozy, for example, that you brought up, has the financial backing to say that he is an expert, making $200 million a year on his investment portfolio. But at the end of the day, he's also said that he doesn't have a lot of close friends. He hasn't seen his father. He doesn't see his family. He doesn't visit Christmas or Thanksgiving. And so that's the type of life I wouldn't want to live. His wife, Layla, has said that she's comfortable working 14-hour days. And if that's the life that you want to subscribe to, that's wonderful. I have nothing against that. You're not hurting anyone. But for me, a meaningful life is a life where I can spend time with my husband watching a movie, going on a walk, having enough leisure time to be able to see my grandmother, to see my mom, to have dinner, practicing a sense of sincerity in the way that I live my life, and having a eulogy where I had a life that was alive. And if that's the life that you would want, what does a healthy life look like? And the Greek word for healthy is like heal thyself. And so we have to look at what is healing at the end of the day, doing more of what transforms us into better people, as opposed to isolation. And isolation is, as we know, is not the healthiest way to live your life. Like, there's also Grant Cardones out there who say that day offs are for the foolish, for the poor, to which I disagree. Like, I think that days off and having some sort of rest is necessary for the body. And so again, I think as a health professional and as a creative, I really think that we need a sense of balance in our day. And balance in the self-improvement space is almost like a curse word. Like, you're not allowed to say that. There's so much out there in the self-improvement and the like health space that I disagree with, because now anyone can just become an expert. And I would say, like, cult-like followings are called cult-like followings for a reason, and they need to be questioned. I think the bottom line of what I'm saying is question everything. Make sure that you do have the opportunity to question. And if there is no opportunity to question, I would question the validity of the person that you are believing.
But the other thing you said is
Yes.
that they should ask themselves what the goal is. Like, what is the actual goal of what they want to do? If they want to just make millions of dollars off the back of a podcast by selling a book, good. But if they can see themselves 10 years down the line going, oh man, I wish I could have spent more time with my parents who aren't here anymore, or I wish I'd found the husband or wife or partner that I wanted, but I spent too long, in the gym, going monk mode, trying to write 10 books a year
That's facts.
about whatever,
Yeah.
or create a podcast, Yeah. I think that speaks to where I am, and I want to tell what I want to tell the world in the podcasting world at the moment is looking inward instead of outward to find what means the most to you is the most important part. So would you say that with the number of times that your goals or not your goals, but your direction has changed with the podcast, just to list off a few, just because I feel like I need
Please.
to show the
Yeah,
credibility of
please.
following you for as long as I have. At one point I suggested to you, or we kind of
Yeah.
deliberated about conscious minimalism. I think that was the last time that we had chatted properly, that you'd flipped to that name.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the rest of me, and then mind. And now you're
Yeah.
doing the sincere practice. Would you say that those rebrands and those changes to what you wanted to do for a podcast was you rediscovering or revealing a little bit more about your own internal goals? Or was it more of an exercise to enable you to explore a little bit more?
It was both. I think truthfully, so much of the evolution of the name is the evolution of who I've become. And I think at the time, I would have told you that I was chasing perfection and I was chasing some sort of like fame or popularity. And the reason why I landed on the sincere practice is I've I've gotten married. I want a quieter life. I love my job. I love what I get to do. I love that I get to talk to you today. And so I realized that I want so much of my life to reflect sincerity, a purity, and a truth to what I do. And a continuation of that is the name. So I really like the reframe that you provided right now of perhaps it wasn't indecision as much as it was self discovery. That in podcasting, so often we're taught that you should just be consistent. And you talk about this. You just publish 8 episodes and you're better
Mm.
than the whole world. To which I say, why don't we make podcasting a sense of self-discovery and exploration and open dialogue? Tiffany Kane, my friend, she always says podcasting is a rebellion medium. It's a way to really talk about what's actually happening in the world without legacy media getting in the way, and you just get to chat and meet people and network. And I love the concept of that. Um, so I've actually done away with, as much as it is nice to like get big, I do want to develop more of a niche audience that's interested in health practices for the creative life. I'm far less interested in getting mass amounts of views or follows. I've changed my metric completely. And I think the name, to your point, has definitely reflected that, where mind, before I changed it to the sincere practice, was an attempt to get more listeners, more followers. The rest of me was at a time when I felt segregated in my identity. I felt like I was showing myself more as the therapist than the creative, than the person. And then conscious minimalism was born out of me wanting to have less. And I've just transformed and just changed so much throughout the last 5 years that the name has definitely changed with it. And I hope this one sticks. I'm pretty sure this one's going to stick. So,
Well, look, there's one other person on this podcast that I've talked to who went through a rebrand. Not as many as you. She only did one. Evelyn Clark.
I'm on the record.
Yeah. But I think doing that transparently, I think speaks to what you want to do as well. Like you are showing the people that are interested in your journey, the journey. And as you said, people are too afraid for things to change or update or, I guess, not be consistent in the parlance of podcasting to need to deviate, you know? Like if you get to the 5th episode and you decide that podcast isn't for you, you should be able to drop it and, rebrand or re-explore. It might be a bit different for branded podcasts and those, B2B kind of thing, looking to make a bit of money off the back of it and have it be a marketing channel. But even then, there's a journey of exploration in there and it's a creative medium. The other thing I want to pull on there is that the most recent kind of way that I describe podcasting to myself now, hopefully to others, might be another episode, is that it's kind of like the English language where there's more exceptions than there are rules. It's not something that you can take out the rule book and flip through and find the bit that tells you what you should do at this point. Like, it can be different for everybody. And so the episode previous to this, I talk about podcasting philosophy. The idea of podcaster divergence is an important thing too, where you move further and further away from needing to pursue knowledge, and you have to explore yourself and what you want to put out in the world. You started there, I think. Not that you didn't have the knowledge, but you started straight away in that outlier, in a place of exploring what you can give and what you want to get out of it. And I find that really, really admirable. But I think something that I want to pull you up on just while you're here, because, you're subject to my whims, is that I think you chastise yourself a lot on your episodes. It's usually towards the end. You bring yourself back to talking about why you do the podcast and your need to explore creative mediums as a way to find meaning and show other people what you have found most interesting. But I think you apologize a little bit towards the end of those episodes as well. Do you find yourself thinking about that at all?
Yeah.
Or do you not realize you're doing it?
Yeah. I do realize I'm doing it. And I think there's a lot, again, the rethinking piece that is also the name of your podcast plays to my detriment sometimes. It's something that I really want to work on. And John, my husband, talks to me about that all the time. He says, you're always questioning every decision that you make. You just have to take what you decide and you have to move forward with it. Don't look back. Don't change your mind. Just, you'll learn. You'll learn as you go. So it's a lesson that has been really hard for me to take and to really internalize, where I feel like I have to make the same mistake multiple times in order to really learn my lesson. So I'm actually grateful that you pointed it out, because I thought it was more of an internal thing, but it definitely does come out in my videos.
Listen, I'm the person who sees a tiny little hole somewhere and I like to stick my fingers in and pull it apart.
I like that. I like that you challenge.
Some people don't like it. But so what are you doing to address that for yourself now? How do you learn how to unlearn a practice of indecision and maybe lack of confidence in what you choose?
Well, a lot of it has been trying to change the medium and diversify the medium. So I've been doing a lot more episodes with guests. So Tiffany Kane from Casa Media Productions, and then I'm having you on, my friend Lauren DeVera, who's a dancer and owner of a studio in Washington, D.C., is coming on as a guest as well. My friend Jeremy. So being able to check myself through the means of other people, like yourself, like Tiffany, like Lauren, has been really helpful for my mindset. You said something to me actually in our last conversation. You said podcasting should be a dialogue. If there's just a talking head, I don't think it's really a conversation or an open dialogue. And so that really helped me. And I think even in my podcasting journey, listeners have reached out and said the same thing that you have said. I think you're too hard on yourself. Why do you put so much standard to get things done on a week by week basis? People reaching out, messaging. But I think that also speaks to the trust that you build as a podcast host, that people do feel like they can tell you the truth. And so I take that as a huge compliment.
But it's endemic of the pressure we feel as podcasters too, right?
Yeah.
It's like standing on stage, facing a room of indeterminate size that's completely black and we can't see who's in it necessarily, and delivering whatever we do. We want it to be as professional and tuned up as possible because we want to not make any mistakes. But hearing from those people that reach out and share a little bit of themselves or what they see in you, I think that's another strength. Again, the podcast exceptions come out. You're delivering to the void, but at the same time, the parasocial relationship is so strong with podcasting that sometimes those barriers are very easy to break down, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. I'm cautioning myself just about whether this should be a therapy session, like a podcast therapy session or something, because I feel like I'm putting you up against it a little bit. But I guess the other aspect of the kinds of episodes that you do is that you're exploring what you enjoy and showing that for everyone. Do you have an idea of the person that you're talking to when you do those episodes?
Hmm. I don't think I do. I think if anything, I'm just speaking to a younger version of myself that needed to hear that. And then selfishly, I see it as a vlog of me changing. Like one day, because my husband is a filmmaker, I'm a creative too, but like there's so many different layers to what I do as well. I'm assuming that my future children are going to be creative. I assume. So I also make it for them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Nothing fancy. I just like making stuff.
That's a good place to be, right? That's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
What would you recommend based on your experience for other content creators today? Like, what do you think they're missing at the moment that they could benefit from if you were reflecting on their experience? You did say that you talked a little bit about Alex there. Clearly, you've consumed some of his content.
Oh yeah.
Are there a
Yeah.
few other ones that you look at and go, what's that one thing that would improve this a little bit more for them?
I sometimes when I consume content, I just want to listen to people talk and I want a genuine conversation and a dialogue. And so much of podcasting has been trying to give people advice. And I would just tell audience members assume people's intelligence. Don't act like they're dumb and don't know what they do to their life. I think there's a reason why Goggins and Rogan and Hormozy have become so popular. I think some people do want to be talked at and want to be talked down to sometimes just to get some sense into them. But the reason why I started to consume podcasting is I loved having a listening ear or kind of being a moth to a flame, hearing a conversation take place that I feel like I I'm just listening to two friends chatting. And I miss that. I miss the sincereness and the purity of what podcasting used to be. And it seems like it's transformed into a money-making model, which is great. And I also miss the purity of what used to be when I was in college listening to the medium. And I think Joe Rogan still does it well. Like he talks to people and he questions them, and it does seem like a dialogue, which is why he's published like 2,000 plus episodes.
Mm.
Granted, I don't agree with everything he says, but I appreciate that he takes the time to just talk to people and share experiences with them. But with that said, though, Matthew, I just want to give a shout out to you where I do think that you have such a teacher spirit, and all of the conversations that we've had today and in the previous weeks have just like reframed so much of the way that I view podcasting and the way that I see media. And I think your voice really deserves to be out there. So I'm grateful for the chats that we've had in the past because I like your contrarian form of thinking. I think it's pretty refreshing.
Thank you. And you're kind of right there. Like the feeling of a podcast being a medium where you're a voyeur to a conversation that you just enjoy watching, not even being a part of or getting any value from, is probably something that's been lost. I think reflecting on the podcasts that I enjoy at the moment, it's the experience of being in a room with other people that really like each other and enjoy each other's company and are curious about each other. I think those are the things that are excellent. And when you can combine the two, get the lessons and advice in a conversation that you just enjoy being a part of, it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to find those these days. If we're panning for gold a little bit here, do you have any recommendations? What's on your podcast list at the moment?
On my podcast list is Good Hang by Amy Poehler, Reclaiming by Monica Lewinsky, and Inside of You by Michael Rosenbaum. So those three are my favorites. Number one being Amy Poehler's Good Hang. There is a reason why she shot to the top 5, because she is having a genuine conversation. My favorite episode is with Seth Meyers, and in the beginning, Rachel Dratch she forgot her pop filter over the microphone and she's like popping constantly. And then the doorbell man rings in the middle of them having a podcast interview about Seth Meyers. And it's just hilarious. And then it jumps to Seth Meyers having a conversation. And so I find it so real, because that's life. Life is mess ups and giggles and, imperfection, all of which I feel like I have so much to learn from. When it comes to Amy, she's so like easygoing and willing to make mistakes and giggle and laugh, which I feel like is such a rarity nowadays.
She's quick too, though, I think.
She's quick. Improv is really good.
But yeah, the imperfections, that's something in the podcasting conversation that always disappears. Like, oh, they shouldn't have answered the door. They should have had a silent doorbell. They should have soundproofed the room so it no sound leaks in, or, that kind of emergent activity is really interesting to hear about too. And on that note, I'd like to very quickly ask you about something that you mentioned in our prior chat, that you kind of escaped from podcast industry kind of stuff, where you have a chat about podcasting as a discipline, and then podcasting about podcasting, and then podcasts about that. It's a very deep hole that you can get lost in very easily. But I'm curious why you decided not to interrogate it too much.
Like why I just left and I didn't stay.
More so why you wanted to avoid the discourse about improving your podcast to no end from other podcasters who also have podcasts. Like I don't think I can say enough to frame the issue the way I think about it, but you can spend too long exploring podcasting content about making podcasts and not spend enough time doing the Amy Poehler research, I guess, finding what's emergent and meaningful for you. So I may have just answered the question for you a little bit there, but what turned you away from it?
It's exactly that. It's when I first started podcasting, my first podcast was called Who You Needed. It was just an exploration where I chatted with my friends and, I talked about my immigration experience, my mental health experience, and that podcast got thousands of listens and views during the pandemic. I shut it down because I felt like it was pretty codependent. Like, why would you need me? You shouldn't need me. And so I had friends say, like, why are you shutting it down now? It's getting a lot of traction. But I would attend and speak on podcast festivals like Outlier Fest, Podfest. I applied to a ton of them and I went to a ton of them. And a lot of the conversation was how to grow listeners, how to get subscribers, as if people were a commodity and not intelligent human beings just wanting to consume content because it was interesting to them. My mind became clouded with so many things that didn't matter. And to this day, I feel like I'm still washing away a lot of that knowledge. The 8-episode thing we mentioned today, microphones. I think that once you get a really good quality microphone, you're already 95% top tier, and no need to buy thousands and if not tens of hundreds of microphones, to which I made that mistake and I got that. Obsession over audio quality, video quality. You get so obsessed with the minutia of everything that you forget why you did that, and how podcasting doesn't need to be super complicated. We don't need a huge media platform to do so. That's why podcasting is so enticing to so many people, which is why I left. It just became too much. And the people that other people listen to were just marketing ploys, I think, to get money and to get networking and business from other audio folks. So, which is why I left.
Makes sense too. you're in the perfect position to say that you don't have to engage with the podcasting for podcasting's sake community to have a successful outlet for your creativity and create a podcast. Like once you have enough of what you need, the rest is kind of just marketing, unless you're looking for those growth strategies that other shows try to use. Yeah, and it's an interesting space as a podcast producer myself at the moment. You kind of have to dive into that space and understand it a little bit more. But there's so much I don't need, you know?
Yeah. Well, what are some things that you discover that are necessary to know as a podcast producer, podcast consultant, and what is unnecessary with all the knowledge that's being put out there?
There's a lot. I think the one thing that's top of mind at the moment for me, walking around in a few communities based around podcast editing and production as a career, like trying to uplift people to be able to offer services to others, it's that the standard podcast fare isn't what you offer other people. What you offer is yourself, your knowledge, your expertise as a collaborative partner with a podcaster trying to make their journey happen. The defined mistake is saying, oh, I remove, 20 to 25% of the ums and ahs and crutch words. I denoise the content. I compress it. I make it loud enough for the platforms. I'll distribute it for you. But usually there's not a lot of room for people to talk about the content, how they're coming to the microphone. I was even listening to a podcast episode from a group recently that was talking about how podcast editors' jobs could be made easier if the client just did their microphone stuff right. And that shouldn't be a revelation this far down the track. And if it is revelatory that it can make the podcast editor's job easier to teach the client good microphone technique, then why isn't that part of what they're teaching other podcast editors to do? It's an extremely large issue. But what I'd say is that if you are getting into podcasting, providing services to people and wanting to be part of people's production, that you invest creatively and bring a bit of yourself into the production and what you would like to see from it, not just doing what they give you and then having no input or feedback or whatever. Like, get invested. I think that's why I've had so many clients by word of mouth. It's because I'm happy to give as much of what I would want to see in a podcast that I produce, rather than just being handed a Zoom conversation and then cutting it together, doing all of the administrative stuff and then giving it back. I think that's the big thing. And that's what you talk to, like the emergent nonsense that appears as part of it. Like I've edited an episode for a client that has their cat popping up in the background and they don't usually supervise those video edits. So I zoomed in on the cat and then zoomed back out again. Like it's those little things, the stuff that you don't expect that aren't perfect. I think that's what makes podcasting great. And if you are offering services to people and you can bring that attitude, I think you'll stand out from the rest.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about microphones now that you've brought it up.
Okay.
Why do you use the RE320? Why is that your microphone of choice?
So that was a voyage of testing.
Okay.
I began with the Blue Yeti, as one does, and learned how to edit content through it. It was great because it's a terrible microphone. And after that, I wanted to try the XLR stuff. So I got a Shure MV7X. What they don't tell you about the Shure microphones is that they are very broadcasty, having quite a deep voice. When I spoke into the MV7X, it sounded compressed, like really squashed and hot, even though I did nothing to it and I couldn't fix it. So it's not the microphone for me. Another person that I met who's also been on this podcast, Mason Amadeus, he has a deep voice, kind of like mine. He's a little bit more performative than I am. but being in search for another microphone that can address the lack of high end in my voice and manage the low end frequencies quite well, the RE320 came up as the primary option for that, because the RE20 has quite a deep bass bump to it, whereas the 320, while being half the price, also has a bit of high-end sparkle to it. So it complements my voice very well. It means that I don't have to do much post-production to it, and that anyone that I talk with on a conversation on someone else's podcast, it generally is a pretty good layup for them, where they don't have to do a terribly large amount to my audio to fix it either. So thanks, Mason. But yeah, that's why I landed on it. I haven't really tried too many other microphones. I've explored a lot of the USB ones, like the Razer Siren Mini. I can't even speak to how many others I've explored. Got a couple of Rode Wireless Go's sitting around somewhere. But I think this is just the perfect microphone for me.
Yeah.
Whereas right back at you, pal, I've seen you with a Samson Q2U, a Shure SM7B. I'm pretty sure you had an RE20 at some point.
I had an RE20, yes, which I regret giving away because I really loved that microphone. But right now I've been using an SM58 for the last 6 months, and I'm itching for an upgrade or a re-upgrade, I guess you could say. So I'm trying to decide between the Earthworks Ethos because of its small footprint, or an RE20 again, because I really love the clarity that it gives my voice. What do you think?
I think
You could also tell me no upgrade too.
funny story. Probably for the last year and a half, whenever I've thought, I've got to get Helen on a podcast, let's have a chat, I always wanted to jokingly lead with, so you have a microphone hoarding problem. What do we do about that?
It's not a hoarding problem. It's a buyer's remorse, buyer's regret, return. And then I always keep my SM58. So
but
yeah, that's my problem.
You would have a better breadth across microphones than any other content creator I'd know, except someone who's in tech and reviews microphones for a living. But you get that experience for what you want to hear that it does to your voice. And then the post-production that you do. How much do you want to change with the voice? So constantly trying these things, it's important. And if you need an RE20 again because you loved how your voice sounded, then I think that's the answer. I think you got to get the RE20. You can try the Ethos. I mean, Tom Webster uses it of Sounds Profitable. He gets a lot of environment noise though, so I'd check what the detail and the cardioid pattern is like on that one. There's a few other people I know that have them. I think there's quite a lot of high-end sparkle on it. Like it seems to be quite a balanced frequency curve. I would check the curve compared to the RE20 and try to figure out why the RE20 sounded great and whether the Ethos is like the polar opposite of that or if it fits in somewhere. But, you know, the RE20 sounds like one of those leather couches that you get that lasts for 30 years and you never want to get rid of it. If it suits, you don't need to upgrade to an L couch with this weird polyurethane material that's better for the environment. Better not to buy another couch. If it works for you, stick with it.
I guess I have my answer. Yeah, I do miss the RE20. It's also the microphone that Amy Poehler uses in her podcast, but she has the black one.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The RE20 floats around in the like the very high end studio areas of the industry because it has such a strong radio presence as well. I think Ira Glass and NPR studios tend to have RE20s as well. It's just very pricey. I think a lot of people look at it and go, no, I'm going to get a Shure SM7B instead. It's like half the price or something. I don't even know. American dollars, it's all different. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the microphones and that I didn't have to.
Well, I love tech. I love microphones, which is why I am so interested in them and why you've seen so many of these microphones. For a long time, I used the Samson Q2U. I really liked how bright it was compared to the SM58, but for listener experience, I think the SM58 is easier to listen to than the Q2U because of how brittle it can sound over time. But the RE20 is one of the only microphones I've ever used where I can listen to a full episode without it sounding like a hand scratching on a chalkboard outside of the SM7B, because it's a good blend of high end while also having like the fullness of my voice. So, yeah.
Interesting. And is it the nails on a chalkboard, or is it some of the psychological bias we have where we hate listening to ourselves?
I think it's, for me, I think I can listen to myself, but I hate watching myself on video. So I edit the video and then I never watch the YouTube video again, but I can listen back to the conversation and learn a lot. But I really like the fact that the RE20 comes with a to-go. I've taken the RE20 traveling too. I had one for a while and then I sold it, unfortunately. So I do have regret with selling that microphone because it was a great one.
Well, Christmas is coming up, and maybe Helen needs to buy a gift for herself before
That's
the
a
end
good
of the year.
point. My birthday is on Christmas Eve, actually. That's when my birthday is. So
There
it's a
you
good
go.
one.
Part 1, birthday. Part 2, Christmas. That's a good split for the RE20, which can get a bit pricey. But yeah, if you enjoy it, that's the important thing, I think. Well, I love what you're doing
Thank
and
you.
have done for the last couple of years. I think a lot of people can learn from your content. So the listener, if they haven't heard of you or seen your stuff before, they should go check it out. The Sincere Practice on YouTube.
Correct.
You have a newsletter?
I do have a newsletter. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
And yeah, Helen Garcia and all the other things. Thank you so much for coming to the conversation. Really appreciated it. And I hope the listener has learned a lot too.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Helen.